I chair this committee. Other members of the committee are Councilman Boykin, Councilwoman Honeycutt, Councilman Pryor, and then our chairman, Mr. Sass, sits on all committees. First item up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of August 17th, 2023.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No one opposed? All in favor? The minutes are approved. Second item on the agenda is parental leave policy discussion. I will just frame this a little bit. This topic or similar topics have come up a number of times in this body. We've heard a lot from employees of our county who, many of whom have advocated for some sort of parental leave policy. There's been a lot of action at the state level, which has prompted some of that discussion at various points. And I think we were considering a sort of semi-leave policy at one point last year that was not necessarily parental leave, but would have served some of those functions. So, talking with some council members, I know there's still interest in this issue. I know some folks have done a lot of digging. I stand ready to support it, and maybe after the end we can entertain if there's any motions. But yeah, I would open the floor up for any discussion anyone wants to have. Mr. Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we had a policy that we looked at that said 3 weeks, I believe it was. And after looking at these policies, the state has already passed one. The city of Charleston, I believe, has passed one. So what I would ask this committee to do is task staff to draft up something similar to what the state and the city of Charleston have and bring it back to us for final approval, which would be recommended 6 weeks, I believe, and then 2 weeks for the spouse. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. That's
my understanding. So that's what I would suggest, and I'd be glad to put that in the form of a motion if I can get a second, and so we can direct staff to move forward to drafting the policies, and bring it back to us so we can get this show on the road.
I'll be happy to second it.
Thank you, Mr. Boykin.
All right. Well, that's very helpful, gentlemen. At least now we're less of a free-form discussion, but still need to have discussion on the motion. Anyone want to weigh in on that? Okay. Okay. I saw Mr. Moody's hand first. Mr. Moody.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not on this committee, but I'm not going to object to asking staff to go bring something back. But what I'm going to be focused on when it does come back are two things: money and equity. We don't know what we don't know about how much it's going to cost. So let's assume this costs. Let's assume 10% of our employees, which would be 270. It could be either men or women. Take this leave. Comes 50 or 55. I mean, I can make a case that this might cost $2.5 to $3 million annually. So the question to me becomes, on the money front, is what do we cut? What do we cut? Hold on. So do we cut PTO across the board? Do we raise taxes? I don't know if we have. Ms. Altenheim, I don't know if we can change our benefits. I think PIBA dictates that, or HR. Anyway, I don't know if we can change that. But my question is, what goes? Because this would be a benefit that would go to a small number of people. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, I think we did institute that short-term disability or whatever short-term leave policy. We had it. We didn't have it. It was requested. We brought it back. The reason I like that is the users pay for it. So that appeals to me. But on the equity front, my concern there is, in my short time on county council, we've always done things for everybody. I think we gave a 3-week, is that last year, 10 days, 3-week, one-time leave to everybody. Everybody got it. That was across the board. Parental leave, what happens if I'm caring for my sick parents? What do we tell our employees who have to leave for a month for a car wreck when they see their coworker next to them that gets 6 weeks or 2 weeks paid and they don't have to use their leave? What do we tell our coworker that has to care for their parent and their coworker gets to take this leave and not use any of their annual leave? It's not equitable. You can't, this council's been very high on equity the last couple of years. You can't pick and choose when you're going to be equitable. You're either equitable or you're not. So those are the two things I'm going to be looking at. The finance piece is what gets cut, everybody, to pay for a benefit for the few. That's where I'm going to be focused. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Warman, Mr. Chairman. The biggest thing to me about this is I would like things to be very well defined. What it is, how long it is, who gets it, how is it administered, and what are the other options. And I think that I'm in favor of us investigating all this. I think it's a good idea for staff to go forward and look at it. I'd also like to hear from staff about some other options, whether it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks or what it is. Maybe we usually look and see what other municipalities and counties are doing. So let's check those out as well. But I'm in favor of us looking at it and coming back and making a decision. But I really want staff to be able to delve into it and come back to us with some good information.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Sass. Mr. Boykin.
A couple of things. For me, my entire career has been public service. I worked for the Department of Natural Resources while I was in college, the University of South Carolina Police Department, the Charleston County Police Department, Charleston County Sheriff's Office, and then another 23 years as a federal employee. I've seen my colleagues and their families make use of this benefit. We have been fighting staffing shortages. We have to compete with all the municipalities and all the counties and the states for winning competition and landing valued employees for incredibly important positions, whether it be fire, EMS, the 911 center. I guess for me, there's a difference between public service and private service. And a lot of times the public sector has a harder time getting employees than the private sector as far as the kind of fringe benefits they can offer. I would, I guess, counter the position of what the cost is. I agree, Mr. Moody, that part of this request to staff should have a financial investigative component. I think our finance folks should have an opportunity to look at what financial impacts may be out there. We need all that information, so that is absolutely right to do. In my commonsensical opinion, what I see potentially is a potential loss of productivity because they're not here. Maybe added burden to other employees to make up those shortfalls, potentially some overtime, and potentially maybe some temp employee hiring. I would say that I don't know what the finance people will find, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that many governments long before us have adopted these policies, and I've not seen any ill effects in my experience that they've worked out very well. The other, going back to equity, now that the state has gone forward with this policy, our county school district employees now enjoy it. It applies to all the teachers and all the employees of the Charleston County School District. They're county employees much like our county employees. They work for a different authority, but they're nonetheless, they serve at this level. The St. John's Fire District, which is a special purpose district below the county level or aside from the county level, they have employed this for their agency. Now they're employees that have it. So I think between the federal government, the state government, and now other county entities and special purpose districts, I don't want us to be late to this game. I'm not trying to run out recklessly without a thorough fleshing this out. But I think for us to remain competitive for the personnel we need to operate, and also, in a way for me, show the appreciation to our employees for everything they do for us. I understand the argument that only pregnant people or soon-to-be parents can utilize this, but everyone can choose to have children and raise a family. And we all know when you have a two-earner household and they're paying a mortgage, especially in these times, if one person can't work, that creates more hardship and strain. So for me, I guess from my personal experience and actually seeing the benefits to my fellow employees throughout my career, I think it could be a good move, but I'll bend to the will of council. But I think I'd be very interested to hear what our finance folks say. Thank you.
Mr. Pryor?
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Boykin said about competition, he's already said enough. But my question is, with this short-term policy, don't you have to use up all your leave before that policy kicks in? You don't, so it becomes automatic. Okay, good point on that. But Mr. Moody, to your point, I liken this to school children. I don't have any kids in school. My kids are out of school many, many years ago, but I still pay school taxes. And I guess I imagine you do too. And I always wondered, hey, look, why after you have no kids in school, you got to pay school taxes? Well, it's just the right thing to do because we want to make sure that our kids are educated. We want to make sure we keep good employees. So I liken it to, yes, it might just benefit a few, and maybe later on down the road we can look at benefiting all. But we want to keep all our good employees if we can. But, a lot of people pay taxes and don't get the benefits of paying the taxes. And so, that's just my take when you say, how are we going to balance this evenly? I don't disagree, because you and I had that basically the same stand, I think, a year ago. But after looking at this and studying this, I think it's going to be a benefit for the county because we get to retain employees. And I think it brings in new employees too, those like replacing our retiring employees. They're going to be looking at benefit the younger generation. So this is why I'll be glad to see what staff comes back with. And when they come back with something, we can vote it up or vote it down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Middleton.
Much additionally, based on some of the previous conversations we had when we were talking about the short-term leave and all those other leave products that we were contemplating, it was very intelligently brought to us that some of these things are revenue neutral in the sense that, there's attrition, there are certain positions that are not filled anyway, and so somehow the budget may be able to absorb some of that based on maybe, and so it may be a real reality, that the finance team comes back and says that based on all of these, we actually have savings because we don't have people working in these jobs, and so that might create at least the pool, and so it may not be as costly as we think once it's analyzed.
Councilman Honeycutt.
The only other piece we have not talked about is the eligibility criteria. I did go and look at what some of the other states are doing. Actually, a student at the Citadel, I want to give him credit because he took on a research assignment and did a lot of research into this. I'm happy to share with council. But various states have done different things, and South Carolina has taken a very broad and aggressive approach that I'm not sure that the county can absorb, wherein a person becomes eligible within 12 weeks of employment, as opposed to, say, Georgia, where it's 6 months, or North Carolina, where it's a year. And so I think some of those criteria, to Chairman Sass's point, really have to be hashed out, and we need to think about what the implications are, because, I definitely think this is important as a beneficiary 3 times of various parental leave policies where I worked. I know it helped with, bringing home a new baby and having time to be with my children it's extremely important. But at the same time, I do share some concerns about when we allow people to enjoy that benefit, when we're going to, that eligibility criteria. And also, we have put on the table the short-term disability, which does address the short-term need, because currently our policy does allow people to take leave as long as they've accrued it. And so one thing I want to make sure we get back when we receive more information is also an explanation of the current benefits so that we understand how this operates currently, especially when it's overlaid with short-term disability for employees that select that. But I am very appreciative that we've brought this back to take action on it. And I appreciate the work already that our finance and HR staff have done to look into it. And so I look forward to getting that back. Thank you.
Mr. Gabrowski.
I just, I've heard everybody speak, and I agree that it is a fundamental benefit that would be a wonderful thing for employees to have. I'm a grandparent now, and all my daughters have used this, and it's profoundly helped them, and that's a good thing, and would be honored to do this for people who work here. I do ask to scrutinize and try to come up with ways to, well, what Mr. Moody said, to try to look for ways that we can cut other things. I think this would be a fundamental thing that would be a great thing to offer that would profoundly help people who it's offered for. But again, the look to see if we can cut other things. And I know there is a difference between, and I admire people who do public service, but the advantage in that is you never have to worry with our employees if they're going to get paid or these benefits. They have lifetime benefits in their retirement. And speaking as somebody in private practice, you never can tell from one week to the next if you're getting paid, and what you put in your retirement comes out of what you earn now. So they'll always be cognizant of that because we take money from everybody. Losing my voice, so I think it's a great thing. I thank you for doing it, but to be cognizant of how it's going to be paid and look for ways we can cut from other things, but thank you. That's it.
Yes. All great points from everyone. As so often happens to me up here, the thoughts of my fellow council members prompt me to think about things more deeply, and thus I apologize to Ms. Altenheim, but I have a question that if it's too much to put you on the spot, feel free to let me know. But it strikes me that we have the short-term disability policies. Presumably some people have selected that option. I don't know when those, if you elected into that last year, when does that expire, / would we be, given the investigation we want folks to do, in addition to bringing a policy to council, would we be able to have that decision so folks know what they need to do in open enrollment this year?
So the short-term disability policy went into effect earlier this year. What we intend to do is offer the opportunity to enroll at open enrollment time, which will be October for it would start the next January. Any new employees coming on board are offered the opportunity to enroll in any of the insurance benefits that we have. So they would have an opportunity when they start with the county.
Okay. And I guess, in talking about, we've got to do some financial investigation. We do, I think the motion was to basically base this off of the states. So I think there is some framework. I guess maybe the question is just a practical one of, do you think it is possible that this council could get that vote final before open enrollment closes this year so folks know whether they should elect or not elect?
Open enrollment would close at the end of October.
Right.
I'm going to ask Patty. You think we can do that in 2 months, get a policy?
We can do a policy very quickly, because we've already done most of the work on it. We have council reviewing it to see if we approve or we need to go back.
Well, very good. And I think that would be the goal. I don't think timing is necessarily a part of the motion, but I do think in fairness to our employees, we wouldn't want to have folks having to elect short-term disability out of sort of uncertainty. So I think that would be the goal. But I agree, we need to have some investigation. And, whatever. I set the agendas for these things. So if we can have a policy, if folks want to say that we haven't had enough investigation, we'll see. But I do think that's going to be my goal. I'll just tell everyone to have a vote up or down that can get, a decision made so folks know what to do for open enrollment before it closes. That being said, Mr. Boykin.
Just real quick, I just want to echo Councilmember Honeycutt's comments. I would be flexible on that entry period or probationary period before it went in effect. I think we can come up with a fair, I think that's a valid point. Thanks.
That's extremely valid.
Very good. All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
All right.
All opposed? None opposed. Motion passes. Thank you. That concludes the Human Resources Committee agenda for today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now we start our Finance Committee meeting. Everyone is a member of the Finance Committee. Item number 1, approval of minutes of August 17 and 22.
I want to comment on that.
All right, so hold on. It was moved.
Okay.
Moved by Reverend Middleton, seconded by Mr. Moody. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oh, I'm sorry, let's have a discussion.
I
Sorry.
wanted to amend it to say I wasn't here, but to put in I would never just not be here. I was sick with COVID and I didn't want to get other members infected, so I just would like to be amended. I couldn't come in that and the other one for that reason, I just didn't not show up. Just for the record, thank you.
We're glad you're back, back
Thank
to
you.
normal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Put that in there?
Presentation,
And then the other
Palmetto
two.
Cap Lead Building presentation.
If you ever have anything like that, if you tell me ahead of time, I'll add it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, thank you, I didn't hear that, I was talking to.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Chairman, SAS, and member of the council. My name is Cash Singleton. I'm the director of Palmetto Community Action Partnership, where I have led since early 2020. Many of you are familiar with Palmetto Community Action Partnership and the great work we've done over the years. This council has been an integral part of who we are and what we've become. Many years ago, this council, Charleston County, approved the use of the current facility that we occupy at 1069 King Street to house our activities. That facility has served us well over the years. However, because of the need and the demand for our services, that facility is no longer adequate. In addition to that, much of the clients that we typically serve no longer live in downtown Charleston. 25 years ago, that was not true. So we now operate out of 3 buildings, one at 1069, one at 1071, and one at 2004 Herbert Street. What we would like to do, and we've reviewed the Lee Building as a potential site for us to move all of our activities so that we can operate together as a company. Right now, our building, our primary building, does not have facilities for folks to eat lunch. We don't have facilities there that's adequate for young women who may need to take a break because they're pregnant or what have you. And of course, there's a law that requires that now. So we're faced with that. In addition, there's no parking there. We share parking with the library. This has caused us not to be as efficient as we can and as effective as we can. And so what we're asking is that the council consider, again, assisting us with space. Our dollars come from HHS and DOE by and large, and the rest of it we raise through private sources. In those dollars, what we try to do is to make sure that the maximum amount of those dollars impact lives, because that's what we do. That's who we are. We are a community action agency who are trying to serve the underserved and to help lift people up. And so with those various programs, we meet people where they are. So we may find a resident who, for example, is struggling to pay a light bill, not because they don't work, not because they're lazy, but because life happens. You know, there's an accident today, you're out of work for some time, and not every job pays you when you're out sick. Not every job has sick leave. And so they find themselves in a position where they can't afford to pay the light bill. And so our strategy and our focus is that if we can keep a person out of that downward spiral, it's much cheaper for everybody and much more effective and efficient to help them before they get into it rather than trying to pull them up out of it. And so what we try to do with those services, we meet them there, stabilize them, and then once we stabilize them, we take a set of activities that's centered around lifting them up and building them. And so that helps then to stabilize that person and help them move on to be better and to live better lives. So a number of products and services that we offer are, of course, many of you may be familiar with our light bill assistance, our water assistance programs, as well as our weatherization program that helps to energize houses so that we can conserve energy there, thereby reducing light bills. We have summer youth programs, which effectively serves children who come from low-income families. That's one of my favorite programs because if we can help a person when they're young to be more exposed and to get the kind of training they need, perhaps they won't find themselves in a poverty situation as they get older. We found that to be very effective. We had this year 54 children that we employed around the city at various companies that we paid their salaries. But we want them to be in an environment where they're being trained and taught how to work, how to get to work on time, those kinds of things. And so that's what the partners that we have do. They make sure they get to work on time and make sure they have meaningful work to do, make sure they learn how to work. And so these are the kinds of programs that have served this community for over 30 years. But if we don't have adequate space to carry out those activities, I shudder to think what happens to those people. We have the opportunity to grow because we do a community needs assessment every 3 to 5 years. We identify what those needs are in the community, and we, along with our partners, we have more than 100 of them, other nonprofits in the area, we work together to try to serve people. And so our objective is to continue that work, but we can't do it unless we have adequate space. And we can't afford to use the funds that the federal government had given us to serve the people. So we don't want to spend all the money for space, but the people go lacking. And so what we're asking today, as I did in my letter to you all, is that you allow us to consider using the Lee Building as our new home. It has adequate space, it has adequate parking, and it is on the bus public transportation line, which makes it convenient for people to reach us. I know that there are a lot of things you could do with that building. I know that there are a lot of other folks who might be interested in it. But I will say this, I believe the work we do and the lives we touch, that building will serve a greater purpose. I would consider the use of that building as an investment in the future of our community. Without a palmetto cap, many of the people who are now able to exist and sustain themselves will fall between the cracks. I'm convinced of that. We are one of 1,500 agencies like ours across the country that covers every county in the United States. We have been rated highly for the last 30-something years. As a matter of fact, this past year, during COVID, out of 1,500 agencies across the United States and every state and every county, we were selected as one of 5 to carry out a COVID vaccine program. So much so that the CDC has renewed us 3 years in a row. And so our work speaks for us. And so I hope that you all will consider us tonight, and that you will consider helping us once again as you did once before. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I didn't use my PowerPoint here because I didn't want to take up a lot of time tonight. I know you got a busy schedule, but it's available if you all would like to have it. Just some facts about us, talks about what our programs are. We've helped people with mortgage assistance, rental assistance, kept people warm during the winter and cool during the summer. We help people with budgeting and finance. We have an affordable housing program. I'll show you some of the property we did. This is our current location. You all may be familiar with, it's next to the art library. And this is the second building we're using. And this is the third building we're using our weatherization program out, running our weatherization program out. This is a unit that we built in 2019. It is a two-unit duplex there, and there's one behind it exactly like it. It's a different color that we built and have people in who are at or below the 60% median income. We have plans to do 6 more, 2 for sale that'll be in Charleston County, out in the county, and 4 for rental in the city of Charleston. In addition to that, we've entered an agreement with a large developer. We're going to do 108 affordable housing units in downtown Charleston in the next year. So we've been busy. We've had a lot going on, but we desperately are in need of space. And so my plea to you tonight is to really consider us. Thank you all very much. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Pryor?
So investing into this building, I know it's going to take a lot of repairs and to do it, so you would be willing to invest upfront money to outfit this building to make it adaptable for y'all without the county incurring any expenses, is that correct?
Absolutely.
And any estimate of what type of money you would be investing in this to get it the way it needs to be?
We don't have a hard number yet because we'll have a lot of due diligence we'll have to do, but because of the size of the building, we probably would be looking at somewhere in the $1 million range to outfit that building and make it a nice-looking building for the area. Quite frankly, I think it'll be a catalyst to help continue to fuel the change that's occurring in that area.
So, final question, any unused space, would you be willing to share it with other nonprofit entities, that can assist in helping folks in that area as well as, countywide?
Absolutely. Initially, we wouldn't need to use all of the building for our purposes, but there are 100 partners that we do business with every day, all of whom, or most of whom need space also. So I see that could be a hub for that area, so that if somebody's coming to see us and they're the same client, they can see somebody else at the same time, some of our partners, and we can share back and forth. In addition, there's limited daycare space in that area. We could perhaps do a daycare center in there and some other things we could do to help facilitate the needs of the people in that area. As I said, we do a community needs assessment every 3 to 5 years, and so we've identified some needs that could be met, and that building certainly could help us do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Reverend Milton?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. The 108 units that you are thinking about building in the city of Charleston, where about would those go?
Those units will be on Cunnington, right next to the space that they're going to build, the homeless facility for people there to get homeless services.
Northern.
But the facility will be right next door to it.
All right, and then also the Opportunity Center, which is in North Charleston, is a model, sort of like several agencies coming together and being courageous and bold and creating a one-stop shop right there. They moved several agencies that were disjointed in West Ashley, various places, and all synergized their work and efforts, and they're now under one building that also has additional spaces to be leased or encumbered right there on Rivers Avenue. Is the social service hub completely occupied? Completely?
Is it? Wow. That was what I was going to ask that.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaprowski?
This is a quick question, and please forgive me if I should know the answer to this. That's very impressive with the 108 affordable housing units. What is the source of the funding for that, and who are you partnering with, and is this?
We're partnering with a company out of New York called Conifer. The city of Charleston put that out for RFP earlier this year, and we, along with them, were awarded that contract to do that. Our part will be what some developers understand about affordable housing is that it's one thing to put people in the units, but it's another thing to keep them in there. And they know that our expertise is with wraparound services that help to keep people stable. And so they ask us to join them as a partner to take on that role. So there'll be 108 units, and they will truly be affordable. There will be units in there that will be as low as $500 a month. So I'm excited about that project. LIHTC financing will be part of the package. We've got some funding that will come from the Federal Reserve Bank, and of course our partner is going to borrow the rest of the money. The city has given us a lease on the property, a long-term lease on the property, I think for $1 a year.
So the city of Charleston is the one whose project it is, and your role would be to help ensure that people stay there and can live there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Middleton?
Units or houses that you're renting, the rent comes back to the Palmetto?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you use those
Put them
for?
back into more housing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir, for your activities. It's wonderful. Mr. Tootin, do you recall what the appraised value of that property was? We had it last year.
Yes, sir. I think it was 2.5.
I'm sorry? Okay, and we really didn't list it, but somebody offered us $1.7 million or something like that, and we took it off.
5.2, and Mr. Darby offered 1.3, I believe, and we. Oh, okay.
Mr. Darby, that's his cousin, John Darby.
Well, I remember because we rejected, and I think Councilman Middleton wisely said, we're going to keep that in stocks. I mean, with all due respect, there's a lot of people that want this property, and they want it for nothing. So I think we've got to just tread very carefully. I think your point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Reverend Middleton, was maybe that at some point the trust fund, or that could be a source of money that go back into things. So there's a lot of need out there, and I agree with that. But that's an asset. I mean, it's not like the Community Resource Center had that little building next door that was just run down and off the beaten path, and nobody was ever going to use. That made a lot of sense there. But this is a pretty valuable asset. So while I agree that there's a lot of need out there, I think we just need to tread very carefully, and what the future resources that we get from it could go towards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Mr. Chair, and
sir.
also, are there additional assets that we have not really reviewed potentially that also could serve as a new home? I'm not saying that I'm against, the idea presented, but what else is out there that we own that potentially also could put them all under one roof?
We looked at the DHEC facility, the same one off of Whipper, but that was too small for their use. But that was the only other county asset that we potentially had.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Singleton. Appreciate your, and we're going to study this, and I think we have a couple other options to look at as well. So, but thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate what you do. You're doing a lot of good.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
We can't make a vote on this tonight?
No, sir. We have another presentation, I believe, next week?
Yes, 2 weeks.
2 weeks? Excuse me, 2 weeks. So we definitely have to do that first. Next item, resolution, direct support professionals.
Move to approve, second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Well, somebody else started, I figured I would give them whoever on the other end down there.
Item number 4, consent agenda.
Move for approval A through G.
Second.
Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Middleton. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Number 5, ARPA
Move for
initiatives.
approval A through D.
Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Moody. Any questions? Mr. Moody, did you have any?
I did. Just a few questions, if you don't mind. First of all, I want to continue to congratulate Ms. Durant, Ms. Smalls on these wonderful efforts. The questions I have, Mr. Tootin or whoever can answer them, the housing repairs A through C, do we encumber these homes with any type of mortgage or assignment or something like that? I mean, I guess with the concern being that if we fix up somebody's home, they turn around and make it, it drives the market value up, they turn around and flip it. How are we protecting our investment in these assets?
Mr. Moody, and Ms. Smalls, feel free to jump in. We do not encumber or put liens or forgivable loans on these emergency rehabs. We have in the past, for more extensive rehabs, done deed restrictions and have done forgivable loans. Nothing would prevent us from doing that. Because of the nature of these funds and the staff time that it would take to add another element, the decision was made not to do that because these are smaller dollar amounts, but we could.
And that makes sense. I mean, if it's $10,000 for a ramp, I get that we don't need to protect that, but if it's something more substantial, then I think we should. On the 5D, the scattered sites, how much did we spend on those? It was like 18 homes we bought. I think 2 were deemed total loss. What's the status of those? How much?
Yes, sir. Again, Ms. Smalls, please jump in if you want. 2.47 million is what we spent for the 18 homes. 2 were demolished. We bought them at the appraised value of the homes. So the ones we demolished, we just paid land. We used the ARPA money for that. And what was your second question?
That was it. A couple more. The documentation on all those things said the county went into agreement for leasing or sale of these properties. I agree. We need to get out of the homeownership business, and these organizations are better at it than we do. And by all means, they're due a property management fee or something like that. But if we're the one that bought the houses, we're the one that funding the improvements. How do we protect our interests in those properties? Is there a revenue share? Is there a revenue split, or what? How does that money come back to us if it can?
You want me to, or you want to take it? Okay, let's give Ms. Smalls a chance.
So earlier in our conversations, we talked about the return on the investment, in essence, is what you're asking. And we did include that in the application process. Unfortunately, in phase 1, there wasn't we didn't receive creative ideas on what they could do. So in phase 2, as we go into phase 2, we decided to up this point from phase 1 to get a better response on how they could use the existing funds. The other thing to keep in mind is that there is a restrictive covenant on those homes, and so they have to stay affordable for 90 years.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any, Mr. Pryor?
Yeah, quick question. All right, so all this was done with ARPA money, right?
Yes, sir.
So when we say return on our investment, was actually the federal government and taxpayers' investment that we, I guess, utilize this money to help others instead of just saying that it comes back to the county, because legally, I don't think we can profit from this ARPA fund. I think we have to reinvest money back into affordable housing or whatever. So when we say return on our investment, it's actually money we got from the federal government that we have to make sure if we make a profit, we reinvest it back into, the housing program.
I agree, 110%.
Yeah. So it's not like we get it for profit. We just reinvest what we turn it over.
Point of my question, sorry, Mr. Chair. That was the point of my question. Is
Yeah.
how do we turn that into
Right.
more housing?
Right.
You
That's- I just
better
wanted to
stated
make
than I did.
I want to make that clear
Yeah,
that we
thank you.
can't make a profit off of that
Yes.
because it's government money.
Yep, agree.
Further questions? That's Mr. Moody. Mr. Darby. Do you have a question?
You all right, sir? Okay. Since been talking about home repair and whatnot, and ever since I
Can you talk into the mic, Mr. Darby? Can't hear you.
Ever since I was a student at Morris College, and lived through the civil rights movement, I always thought that the church should have a role in terms of social justice, because too often driving down life's dark highways, the church has been a tail light as opposed to a headlight. And what we have today with the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, I think they are a headlight as opposed to a tail light. And I do believe that they could assist with housing. I've been told they literally have thousands and thousands of members. And I am of the opinion, if Jesus, the man, were here today, he would start with that house first and then move on. So what I'm wanted to do, would like Mr. Tootin to do, if he could please get the top leaders of CAJM to meet with whomsoever to discuss the role of how that organization could assist government with home repair. I spoke to Mr. Durant this morning or this afternoon. There are over 900 homes in need of roofs. At a point it was 1,100. We are filled to capacity in terms of need. So I'm thinking if we have government and church working together, particularly with CAJM, and what those members could do to assist financially, that we could really resolve, or at least remedy some of these houses. And what are the pros about this, that these people would stay in their homes and would not become homeless. There's a lady who's 92 years old. Her roof is caving in, and rightfully so. Mr. Durant said it's pretty tough because she can't jump the line. She is 92. The roof is sinking. So I feel that CAJM could assist us. So I'm going to ask again, Mr. Tootin, to find out who those leaders are, and if 2 or 3 of us would be desirous to find out how the church can assist us in home repair. And not that we are playing tit for tat. When CAJM came here, of course, we reciprocated with in terms of the millions of dollars that we have had to help on housing. So this is an opportunity for CAJM to help us in terms of social justice. So if anyone who would be interested in meeting, if they were to meet, and if they would have a desire in helping, I'd be very appreciative.
Mr. Chair, just along the lines of what Mr. Darby is saying, CAJM is not a church. So
I'm sorry, I apologize.
So let me, stipulate that.
Yes, sir. As an organization.
CAJM is an organization that is comprised of houses of worship, which include synagogues, not a mosque yet, but synagogues, churches, and other entities like the YWCA is a part of CAJM, and other entities that have a common mission. CAJM is a policy action or organization, not necessarily a housing like the Palmetto. They're not doing this. Mm-hmm. They're not developing and building. They're targeting, as it relates to their social justice advocacy, looking at disparities, gaps, looking at policies, and demanding direct action. That's their theoretical framework, right, to take leaders to task. And so their mission is not necessarily congruent with what we're about to ask them to do. I just wanted to say that because, of course, my church is a covenant organization, or has been in the past with CAJM, so I'm very familiar. I've served on their board, et cetera. And each of those houses of worship, they are tasked with paying into CAJM, and CAJM has not historically seeded money outside, except they use the monies that the individual churches sow is supposed to be a percentage of their annual income of the church. They're supposed to tithe to CAJM, and that becomes part of their budget, along with funds that they receive from network members, They ask good network members to pay $200 annually, and so that goes into the budget. So they really don't even take money from interest groups because they don't want to be beholden to anybody except their internal covenant members and their network members. And so that much I do know. And so I just want to be extremely transparent that when asking them to do this type thing, helping with home repair, weatherization, that sort of thing, surely they can advocate and they would stand on the corners and jump up and down for organizations who should be doing that to do it, but themselves, it's not within their mission or their vision to do that. Now, certainly the individual churches, like, my church, Mount Zion, AME Church, and other churches, sure enough, we have been in that business forever as it relates to partnering with the Sustainability Institute. In fact, our church and its restoration is completely sustainable and carbon neutral to a certain extent. But that's something that individual churches, Ebenezer, Morris Brown, Emmanuel AME Church, they have that Central Park apartments, the EME apartments over. So, I mean, there are churches that are in this industry of doing this, and so CAJM can't even compel the individual churches to do that, but the individual churches should have a social justice interest to do that. So I just wanted to be, as one who is bivocational, but definitely clergy, certainly sensitive to that request and would be willing to do anything to help. But it would be the mobilization of the ministerial alliances and the denominational bodies to do the type thing that you're asking tonight.
Yes, sir. Well, Reverend, thank you for prolifically in terms of CAJM, and I guess I need to be a little more specific, but in terms of an organization as a church as a whole, what I meant, just as they advocate for certain things, why not advocate for housing repair? Of course, not for them to really partake, but they have the instruments, they have the advocacy to help in terms of raising funds as a organization, and that's what I was asking. In terms of mission and vision, every Monday morning, these same churches put in millions of dollars in these banks every Monday morning. So as an organization, why can't they assist us by saying we're going to help raise funds for a social need? Because there comes a time in any organization, there comes a time for the need of a paradigm shift. Because if we were still doing the same things we did yesteryear, Christians will still be boiled in hot water and oil. So to be somewhat innovative, I think that they would be in a good position to help the community by saying raising dollars. We know the individual churches assist, but as a collective unit, how much greater that advocacy would be. So that's all I was asking as an organization, if we can meet with them to see what they could do to help with 900 homes and people who are aged. I'm talking 90 years old. I'm not talking 60, 65, or 70. I'm talking the elderly. And if we can't go to a church body, then whom can we go to? So that's my only request, sir. Not in terms of them being, say, we're just going to get this roof fixed. Help us raise the dollars, because Mr. Rand is saying we are filled. We don't have any more dollars. And perhaps, who knows, if they can't help, we may need to reorder our priorities in terms of dollars that we give for the housing and say, hey, we need to keep these people in homes. Perhaps we can use these dollars for the roof. But I didn't want to go that route. So I wasn't being facetious. I know you didn't mean that. And asking CAJM, but it's a leading organization in this county.
And I also wanted to add, just information and awareness and education, they go through an annual process, which they're beginning now, to determine their issue. And if you want housing advocate, whatever the ask is, that would have to go through these various assemblies.
Yes, sir.
And then it would have to rise up to their Nehemiah action, and it would have to become the one issue that they all agree on. And so if they don't agree that this is the one issue that they will attack,
And I like to understand, that's why I would like to meet
Yeah.
with the leaders to see whether that is a possibility.
that process
And
is
if they
going.
say it's not,
That process is going on right now.
Yes,
Is
sir.
what I'm telling you.
well, perhaps next year, sir. It's going to be around for these houses, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Ms. Drent, Ms. Smalls, I want to thank y'all for the job y'all are doing. I liked what Mr. Moody talked a little bit earlier about the return on investment and turning that money back in and turning it over back into the community, keeping people in their homes. That keeps families together. That helps build wealth. And these are all very important things. I really appreciate the job y'all are doing on that. So thank y'all very much. I think we still need to vote on this item.
Before you do this, sir, Mr. I can wait till afterward, but the question would be, how many dollars do we have left in those, that 20 million we had given to housing repair?
I'm going to answer this as succinctly as I can. You've committed through gap financing and infill 10.2 million of the 20 million. 2 of those projects, one is closed, one is close to closing. You have 3 more projects that are in the process of moving to the next level. I'm saying that because if the next 3 don't move fast enough, we may have to come back and ask you to reallocate that money. But for now, 10.2 is what you've committed. You will have at the September 21st meeting potentially, or maybe the next one, and ask that the balance of that 20 million be considered, instead of all the different programs that we talked about, move that toward more gap financing and infill development, because there are a number of projects out there that could help us with units. So that's the 20 million that you all set aside for housing. The yellow sheet, one of the yellow sheets that you have today actually asks you all to move some money from the nonprofit capacity building, right? Nonprofit capacity building category over to the rehab program because of the need, as you mentioned, 1,100 applications, about 900 remaining. And what I would say to that, Mr. Darby, is we had to close the applications. So that actually doesn't necessarily represent the need in our community. That simply represents the number of applications that we received while they were open. Right? Yep. So, in a nutshell, you have uncommitted about 9 million that you will see at the end of the month. And then you have other funds that you have committed for other programs. Council can choose to reallocate that differently. But at the time, that was based on the priorities. That was all allocated based on the priorities that council said you wanted staff to achieve, combined with the community needs assessments that we did. So nothing is bound that has not been contractually obligated. It's simply bound by council's action to commit and proceed.
And I realize that there were certain categories which have not said who's going to get what, but when you have someone who's 92 years of age, you can imagine when all was not fair of what they had to go through. One particular lady who's 92, she helped integrate MUSC when it wasn't fashionable doing so. That's just the way the world was at the time. So now she was on the battlefield to help others, and she now needs help. And there comes a time we have to really remember from whence we have come, whether we are black or white, and the struggles that we have made together to make this a better place. So it's things like that that could be quite bothersome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've spoken enough, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Darby. So we need to vote on 5A through D. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item number 6, financial. Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by Mr. Moody. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Item number 7. Yes, sir.
So this property that way, can anybody tell me who this Crew properties are? And can you tell me and explain to me why does it make sense to?
Well, I can't tell you why it makes sense. I was going to ask a question, sorry, Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow me. I was going to ask the question why the fence that they built that prohibited us from getting in there and removing the trees meant we had to cut our price that we were going to sell them the land for. I don't fully understand that. Crew Properties appears to be running I think they've got a short-term rental there. I can't quite tell if they also maybe live there and rent out a portion of it. It looks like it's a sub-unit of that property, but yeah, it looks like there's a short-term rental at that property, and that's probably why it's owned by an LLC and not by some person. There might also just be someone living there in the other half of the building. I don't know that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, would not this be beneficial for us to look at maybe working with a nonprofit and turn this into something affordable, or, I mean, we're looking for affordable housing.
It's not that large.
It's tiny.
It's
It's a strip.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
not.
It was like a right-of-way.
Yeah, it's an abandoned drainage line.
Yeah, a drainage easement.
It's not real wide. I remember
Uh,
reading that.
I was going to ask the same question. I appreciate that clarification. It
Yeah,
does
that
appear pretty small.
How wide is it?
It'd be a skinny house.
All right, so, yeah, well, they got a lot of them in Union Heights, skinny houses, I can tell you that right now. All right, so I understand now, okay.
All
I
right,
thought it
any-
was a big lot, but it's not. Okay.
Any further questions or discussion?
So I'll move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Pryor, seconded by
Mr. Werman.
Mr. Werman. All in favor, say aye.
Oh, no. Aye. I'll say aye with annoyance about why we're cutting our price for something they did.
Nays? No nays? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Yes, sir, Mr. Pryor?
Before we close out, because I most definitely have to leave, but I'm a little perplexed and I'm a little upset with this recycling mess that we are in. I'm getting a lot of phone calls from constituents, and I'm getting a lot of phone calls from city council members. When we tell our constituents it's going to be 2 weeks before we pick the recycling back up again because of one day due to a storm, that's kind of hard. And I saw this young man, Aaron, in the neighborhood loading trash on the back of his pickup truck out of these cans, taking it to the dump when it should have been going to recycling. And so, can someone explain to me where we at? Maybe Mr. Tootin, you can have an answer by Tuesday. What are these people going to do? I think they're coming down this next week anyway, right?
They're coming next week.
And, this stuff about we don't work on the weekend, well, if it's a tragedy, or emergency, an act, I mean, we need to find out why they can't work on the weekend. Our crew's out there working on the weekend. Everybody else is picking up stuff on the weekend to keep the schedule. So if that's going to be they eat their way out, we don't work on weekends, I mean, we need to look elsewhere. And secondly, as far as the financial piece of this, I want to know how many houses they miss. I don't want to just say, well, we missed one subdivision that counts as one. If we miss 50 houses, I want to be deducted for 50 houses. If we miss 100, the contract says they'd be deducted for each one, not just one subdivision. So can someone, we assign someone to get that information, to have it to us by Tuesday to know how many houses that were missed individually, and then what is this going to cost them out of the money we pay them every month? And then how do we get with them to say, hey, look, during the time of a storm or hurricane, you got to work on the weekend like everybody else.
Mr. Pryor, please should put down there 4743 Ezekiel Avenue. It's been there for a month, sir. Do that
Well,
for me, please,
the
sir.
neighborhood too. Our neighbors usually get it picked up on Thursday, and in the neighborhood it didn't get picked up, and people are saying why we couldn't. And I heard that they said they don't work on the weekend; they'll catch them in the next 2-week cycle.
We have always managed to have, we do it the next day. We pick everybody up.
Right.
And we've got to do that. People can't can't go 2 more weeks. No. It's just not.
That's
not
irresponsible.
right. We got to
and
fix
it's
that.
not professional.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moody's first.
Mr. Pryor, we're having a special environmental management meeting Tuesday prior to county council. We had talked about having a meeting in October, and there's a few updates that Mr. Thigpen and his team will give us. But in light of what happened in the storm, it happened everywhere. It's we're patching recycling, and
right.
it's they're pretty feisty right now. So
Yeah.
I asked Mr. Thigpen, Republic is going to be here to speak to that, so we'll have plenty of time for Q&A on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, if they need help, I mean, they need to go out and hire help to bring them in. I mean, this is, this was a crisis. This is chronic. I wouldn't say a crisis compared to Florida, but I mean, people they're telling somebody 2 weeks, and, and they pay a user fee. That's kind of insulting.
We got to fix that.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Thank you.
Foreman, did you have a question?
No, I was going to mention and probably defer to Councilman Moody. I'm very glad we're having that next Tuesday. I mean, yeah, I can't agree more. We've been able to accomplish much more when faced with much more severe storms. So, yeah, I mean, it's objectively lesser service than we've been able to provide in the past. I mean, there's just no disputing that. So, we're excited that everyone's got some energy to correct that. But yeah, it's very frustrating.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, finally, sir, I want to thank Mr. Pryor and others, and Ms. Honeycutt. She talking about she cares for people and whatnot, and she came to my school the first day of school, offered her a job. She told me no, so that tell you how much she cares about people.
You can't afford it. Okay? I
just want to say,
you cannot afford it.
Ms. Honeycutt really stood out at North Charleston High School the first day of school.
Did stood out.
She did indeed, and I'm very appreciative, ma'am, of your attending to help us out that first day.
Yes.
Thank you so very much, ma'am.
Thank you all. We're adjourned.
Man, when I said men, I'm sorry.